story. I actually was a school dropout.
Wow.
Where did you lose touch with your inner child? I'm a white male. I'm Australian, and that comes with an incredible place of privilege.
This age is a very interesting topic for us human beings. We're sort of always questioning, am I too early or am I too late?
Your age doesn't define your ability to do incredible things.
So my last question is confidence. We are here at St. Gallen Symposium, and I met Toby yesterday at the panel where he talked about climate change in a way that was super relatable to me, at least. And then we talked about things like love, and I've never heard climate change and a topic like love, in the same discussion. So I was very intrigued, and we discussed further, and we realized that our values also match. So hence we are here discussing even further. So Toby, what do you do?
So my name's Toby, obviously. I'm the Deputy Mayor of the Huon Valley, so I'm the youngest Deputy Mayor in Tasmanian history, and was elected when I was 20 years old. So that takes up a lot of my time now, but traditionally my career has been based off the climate movement, so that's why I make these connections between public policy, public politics, and climate change, because that's been my career. That's what I spent 8 years doing.
8 years? So how old were you when you started doing it?
I did my first project on climate at 12 years old.
Wow.
So I'm 21 now.
Yeah.
And 12 years old.
And did you study in college? What did you study?
Funny story, I actually was a school dropout.
Oh, wow.
I didn't finish high school. I don't have a high school education certificate.
Yeah.
I dropped out and actually moved to Bali, Indonesia, to grow my expertise, but also learn new perspectives around the issues that I was really working on.
Yeah.
Being climate, social justice, intergenerational equity, and all those sorts of things. So I went to Bali, Indonesia, and left school. And yeah.
I'm actually very curious that it's difficult to do that, and especially when you're not starting a business as such, but something like climate change. So, were you supported by your peers, by your parents, by your friends? Did people really understand you then?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think back, when we look at a climate movement and the youth perspective and the involvement in the climate movement, it's still very new. It's still an incubation stage. So when I did make this decision, there weren't many there was no Greta Thunbergs, there was no Louise Barnett. So there was none of these, world-renowned climate advocates who happened to also be young people. So going into that space was always a really big challenge. It was still an incredibly, maybe is a better English, topical issue in Australia. So going into that space was always really challenging. But I did have support from friends and family, even though sometimes they weren't always supportive of my message, they were supportive of my passion.
Wow.
Which is an important part of my story, is that I didn't come from a place of environmental credentials. I didn't grow up in a space that, talking about the impact of climate change was welcome to the dinner table. It just was not the atmosphere I grew up in. But I did grow up in an atmosphere that is just what your passion is, then we're not going to put a barrier in between passion, and we're going to support you to do what you believe in.
Right. So my favorite topic that we were discussing about yesterday was inner child. So the way you spoke about it showed your level of depth with the topic. So how do you connect both, or do you connect them at all?
So I think if you connect, the way I connect with climate change is, and I said it's quite a controversial thing for me to say, is I'm not a climate advocate because of the environment. I couldn't care less on the environment. I obviously care, but it's not the reason that I am passionate about this issue. It's fundamentally about people. And for me, understanding why you're passionate about an issue, like me with climate change, is you first then take back yourself and understand your individual relationship to the issue, and how does that relate to the things that you care about and the things that matter to you. But then also growing up in a space where it is such a big topic that we're discussing, and there are millions of different perspectives. Something that I get really sad about, and I've realized just recently actually, is that we have to remind ourselves, me too, it's really sad that I also have to remind myself on making sure that I am empathetic and I'm kind.
Yeah.
And those values are present in everything I do. And I recently had an interaction with somebody that probably wasn't a supporter of mine, well, obviously wasn't a supporter of mine, whose response to my comments was, "Toby, stop being such a child."
Wow.
And to reflect on that, it's like, wow, thank you so much for calling me a child, because maybe I haven't lost touch with those values that we're taught as children. The first lesson we learn is how to share with our siblings, or the first maths quiz that we get is if there's 4 slices of pie and 3 people, how much is left over. And it's all those fundamental values that we're taught on in every topic and every aspect of our lives. Kindness, empathy, and where do we lose that in our career? How do we ask ourselves that question? Because that's a really tough thing to reflect on. But the challenge that I give to myself, but also the people I talk to, is where did you lose touch with your inner child in your career?
Authenticity is something that we all want and somewhere struggle with in places like these, where we are exposed with people from all over the world, from different industries. So how do you make sure that you're actually bringing your authenticity, which is also a touch of love that we talked about, a touch of inner child, playfulness? How do you bring that forward wherever you go?
Well, I think it's individual, so I couldn't give a blanket approach to that because they're very different. But I'll give you the answer of how do you know that you've done that. And when you've spoken on a panel, when you've been in a meeting, or you've made a decision, or you've spoken publicly about something that you're passionate about, or say you're employed to do, ask yourself the question, do you feel proud because you impressed your boss? Or do you feel proud because you said something that your wife or your children or your husband or your mum or your dad or your family would be proud of you saying? And if you can answer that question and say, actually, I think my kids would be very proud of me saying that because that was really authentic of me, then you found that. But if you've said something and it's impressed your boss, not saying that that's not an important thing, but maybe you have a little bit of work to do on finding that authentic self.
Does it also come with practice? Because I think I've been on both the sides. I've in rooms where they were just men entrepreneurs, I was the only women, and I think I was wearing this suit itself. And I've also been in situations where I was not comfortable being myself. I was very nervous. So did you also have such experiences? And then what did you do about it?
Yeah, I obviously haven't had experiences like some people do, whether you're a woman, a person of colour, you're part of a minority group, because I do come from a community and place of privilege. I'm a white male, I'm Australian, and that comes with an incredible place of privilege. So I think it's always important for me to recognise that, to give space to people and let people know that their space is welcomed in the arena that I'm speaking in, or that I'm involved with in. Because if we don't appreciate that and reflect that as individuals, then we're not opening that up. But, there have been instances in just being a young person, spaces, you often get told, you're too young. And my favourite response that I always give is, when did you get your book of life? Like, what age did you get your book of life? Because it's not when you turn 18, it's not when you turn 21, it's not when you turn 50. It's different for every single person. So how can you segregate a community of young people because they haven't reached that level, or they haven't reached that, societal accepted, measure of being mature enough to have these conversations?
Yeah, I love that. Also, because how I connect with it is when I was younger, I felt like I'm young and I can't have like a proper stern word out there. Like, who am I? I'm too young to know. And now that I am in my late 20s, I'm like, there are so many young people who are doing so much. When did I lose time? So this age is a very interesting topic for us human beings. We're sort of always questioning, am I too early or am I too late?
But it's also something we need to respect, is every generation, and the way I would explain this to children is every generation has imaginary goggles and they see the world differently.
Yeah.
My generation see the world very differently to my parents' generation.
Yeah.
My parents' generation see the world very differently to mine.
Yeah.
So we have these lenses that are not consistent across all these generations. So you need to respect that is present and that's not going away. But ask the question of, how do you resource that? How do you use that in an intergenerational atmosphere that actually builds on solutions to big crises, that actually builds on the values important to people, but also builds on the relationship between one another to actually have collaborative outcomes on the things that we're looking.
Yeah. So 2 more questions. One, again, going back to my favorite topic. So you're meeting so many people from, like wearing suits and having discussions on really serious topics. So how do you, in your life, practically keep that inner child and playfulness alive?
Good question. You need to know who your people are. Your battery gets drained. We all have a battery and it gets drained. And there is a level of when you're above 50%, you've got the inner child there. When you're below 50%, it's missing a little. So you don't find your people, find your way. How do you steal that battery up? When there's atmospheres, you walk through the holes, you smile at somebody, you don't have a conversation. And you walk through the holes, you don't know if that person had breakfast this morning or they're just going back to
Right.
So we need to put ourselves forward to actually say, hey, how are you today? Can I give you a glass of water? That's one step we can take to refuel that battery. But also, in those very small, special moments that we always remember, was not the best speaker. It was not, the free drinks afterwards. It was those small moments of pure happiness, whether it was dancing with a stranger, whether it was singing a song, whether it was having a good laugh. They are the small moments that we all remember, no matter what you believe in. They're things that we remember at these places. So you need to embrace that and make sure that you are truly going to use that to fill your battery back up. So then when you go back into that conference room, you've got a little bit of a high. You're like, just fill my battery up. I've got being a child back here.
Yeah.
And, that crazy, uncomfortable time that I was just singing like nobody was around at a formal conference was that place.
Yeah.
And of course, that's just an example. Everyone has their own way to say.
So that is an answer that I was not expecting. But it makes sense because a lot of time we're spending talking to people, and if we choose them wisely, of course, that adds value to our energy levels as well. So my last question is on confidence. I mean, this is one topic that no matter how old you are, whether you're just starting a journey or you've 30 years of experience, confidence is something we're always trying to get more of. So how do you, you give so many talks and you're exposed to so many people. So how are you so confident?
Again, it's the same way as I know who my people are. I've been very, very vulnerable with the people that I care about, who also care about me.
Yeah.
And they know that to build confidence, you need people around you that are going to support you no matter what. If you make a mistake, they're going to be there to cheer you up. If you do a good job, they're going to be there clapping their hands no matter what. You need those people. You really need to find this. And that is tough. It is a long journey. But, also in confidence is find those small messages that actually, that give you a little bit of motivation. If you don't understand, my thing that I just remind myself all the time is your age doesn't define your ability to do incredible things. And the postcode that you grew up in does not define your ability to do incredible things.
Yeah.
Or your gender does not define, all these things. But that one sentence for me is, you have a confidence, This isn't a definition of what I'm able to do. This is not a definition of my ability. And this is not a representation of my understanding or connectedness to the issues I'm passionate about.
Yeah, okay, so last question. And this is a tough one. So you said that you've got to find your own people. How do you find your own people? Because, for example, for me, I have switched from one industry to another. So as I was saying that, So how do you find your own people? Like people you resonate with, aligned with your values, aligned with your vision, your dreams.
Yeah, well, I think finding out people best is they don't always have to align with your values and dreams.
Okay.
I think that's really because you need to surround yourself with people that are full of love, that are full of giving, and that are full of kindness. That doesn't, those 3 values should not come at the loss in, you don't have the same perspective as me, so you're not my person.
Yeah.
That segregates you into a community. This is just my people.
Right.
Where I have friends that are extremely deregulated. We have healthy debates. We still go to the pub and have a beer afterwards. Or we still go have dinner on the weekend. Or they still invited to our parties and our social events. So I think first we need to break into that atmosphere to find out it. And out of that mindset. Because at the end of the day, we are all human. And the difference of opinion should not be the license supports collaboration.
Thanks. I love that answer. I'm going to take that advice for sure. Yeah.